Good morning, welcome. Thanks for joining us for Jumpstart's last State of AI webinar of 2023. I'm Lauren Smith-Petta, and I serve as Jumpstart's Director of Education. Today's session is our monthly State of AI update for entrepreneurs and is focused on the monthly highlights and headlines of AI, what you need to know in 30 minutes, and how to successfully and ethically apply these tools to your business today. Jumpstart offers another webinar series on a different topic every month, along with a variety of other educational programs and events. Visit jumpstart.org/smallbiz to explore our services. Before I introduce our presenter today, a few obligatory housekeeping items. This presentation session is a mere 30 minutes. Another 30 minutes will be set aside for the Q&A portion. In your toolbar, you should be able to see an important communication tool at your disposal today, the Q&A. You can put your questions in the Q&A as they occur to you, and Brad will address them at the end. At the end of today's session and in a follow-up email, you'll receive a brief survey via email. We appreciate your feedback. It allows us to continue to bring in experts like Brad to teach valuable lessons for free and to bring him back for more AI webinars in the new year. All right, without further ado, allow me to introduce our esteemed AI expert and presenter today, Bradley Reynolds. Bradley is a recognized leader in the AI industry with a deep understanding of the transformative power of large language models and generative AI. As the Senior Vice President of Artificial Intelligence at Expedient, Bradley spearheads efforts to simplify the operational deployment of private AI infrastructure for enterprises given strict data governance and regulatory requirements. So whether you understood all that fancy jargon or not, I can promise you're learning again from the expert today. Welcome back, Brad.
Thanks, Lauren. I will try and modify my bio to be less of a tongue twister. That's a takeaway from this one. But we'll pop into the December version of this presentation, and I think we've given this one. I think this is the fourth month, and I wanted to maybe take this presentation down a little bit more to, okay, and what can AI actually deliver? So today's presentation, as opposed to necessarily focusing on tools that you have at your disposal, trying to show you some rough or finished product in terms of how we can apply tools to deliver value to businesses primarily. And I'll give you some examples of use cases that we've run through, kind of like ROI analysis, time savings, and that type of stuff. So before we get to that, do a little bit of housekeeping. So we've been doing these on a monthly basis. In 2024, we're going to be moving it more to a quarterly basis. And so that'll be a little bit of a change. My guess is the first one for 24 will happen in March. So set the level in terms of some of the use case value. There was a study that came out towards the latter half of this year from BCG, and I think I might have touched on this in previous presentation. But BCG is obviously a group of some of the highest capable knowledge workers, consultants, and they were employing generative AIs, which was ChatGPT, GPT-4, to help in their consulting tasks. And so this would be like, coming up with PowerPoints and working spreadsheets and writing documentation and, at a very high sophisticated level. And there was a marked increase in the quality and quantity of output from them. So it's kind of like, great, that by employing generative AI, they're able to kind of move the needle, and you can see it kind of graphically here substantially. But the kind of problem is all of the rest of us are looking at a ChatGPT or a chat log and being like, great, I have this extremely powerful tool. What do I do with it? What are some examples? So what we found as a business is the thing that gets people start to understand it and start to get acceptance around it is to start picking off use cases. We think about chat as like a gym membership, but you really need like somebody to show you what machines to use or a personal trainer to kind of take you around. And that's where the use cases come in. So the use cases are more of like, here's a plan to use the machines and maximize your gym membership. But we believe very strongly, or I believe very strongly, that everybody should have access to the highest level AI tools, and you should certainly be taught and educated a little bit about what to do with them. But you have to have access first. If you're using GPT 3.5, you've missed the boat. In fact, in the last month, Google's announced Gemini, which is their answer to GPT-4. And I've seen some preliminary numbers that say it's on par, if not slightly superior to OpenAI at this point, but it's not generally available. So it's intriguing to see that the multiple tools are kind of coming out there, but that's part of your gym membership is getting access to the best tools. So I look at chat as opposed to necessarily just doing ad hoc small items during my day-to-day, as what are common use cases that I have or things that I do on a regular basis. So for me, a lot of it is creating presentations and ideating marketing strategy type stuff. Those are things that I use ChatGPT for. So the question I'd ask myself is, are those things that I'm doing on a repeated basis enough that it becomes like a use case that I want to figure out how to automate that kind of process for me? And for me personally, I don't have that many, but inside of an organization, by giving folks access to chat universally, you'll find that people will be like, oh, I'm doing this thing or solving this problem, but I solve this problem every day. So what is that it's solving, and how do we kind of turn that into something that can be automated? So that's kind of how we figured out. I mean, context for all of this is, what's AI really good at? It's great as a pattern recognizer, picking needles out of haystacks. But where the real power and how you unlock these early value returns is by getting AI tooling in the hands of a subject matter expert. So notice I didn't say a technologist or an IT person or a developer, which is where a lot of the conversations about AI adoption goes. How are we going to build these systems? It's more about, how do we educate the people that actually know about our business as to the power that AI has, so they can make the connection of, oh, this stuff that we're doing, I can use AI to take 80% of the load off of that. An individual developer, a technologist, isn't going to know the nuts and bolts of the business that are necessary. So AI can find that needle in the haystack or do that summarization or analysis work, but who's going to instruct it? It's certainly not the IT team. So, but there's a gap right now between how much the subject matter experts that control the actual essence of a business really understand what they can do with AI. So if you look at sales, marketing, technology, executive, and you kind of look at who holds the keys to the fort in those locations, how competent are they at AI, and how do we get those tools out? And so one way that we found is by kind of looking at use cases, and by implementing relatively painless early stage use cases to make the life of the subject matter expert better, more productive, that creates a halo effect inside of the organization. So we kind of look at things in a status of always crawl, walk, run. So when folks inside of our organization come to me and ask, hey, can we use AI to do this? I'm a lot of times I don't know the answer to that. Like they're coming up with something I've never seen before, or trying to connect different types of data that I have never seen demonstrated. But by having everybody in the organization with access to the highest level chat tools, like we do at our company, I can tell them, hey, can you make it work manually through the chat interface? Now, we have some protections inside of our org where we have some private AI models and some public ones like GPT-4. So if we give people the direction that if it's something that involves confidential or client data, you use one of our internal private models so that it doesn't go out to the open internet. But conceptually, regardless of the model, it's can you get it working yourself? Because I'm not a subject matter expert in customer support or high-level customer support at our organization. So that whole early tweaking process of can I get AI to do these things involves that person going back and forth with the chatbot and kind of getting it tuned to a point where it's rough but roughly accurate. And then we can do some more exciting things with that. But trying to put the power of mastering the AI or understanding the relationship with the AI to the SME is a critical component of the crawl phase to unlock kind of business value. The walk phase comes around internal data. And I don't think a lot of folks are ready to get to the walk phase yet, but that's the step after which you'll get some general kind of expertise. But now you're talking, I want to do things with private company data. And because it's secure, I need to have private models. I can't send them out to the open internet. And then the run phase is great. I have that stuff figured out. I'm now going to create these application workflows that can start automating components of my business. Run phase for most companies, say in Cleveland, it's probably 3 to 5 years out there. You might be able to pick off certain applications, but that crawl phase of getting comfortable with it and getting the people that actually run your organization, not the technologists, comfortable with it, there's a whole kind of emotional and psychological thing that has to happen there that I don't know how long that will take, but it's not happening in like a month or two. So as we're kind of looking at use cases or ways to demonstrate efficacy of AI inside of an organization, we're looking for quick wins. So this is based on all experience from us here at Expedient. It's can we align AI projects or AI use cases with existing objectives and key results that we have? So just the existing points that you're already trying to achieve. Can AI accelerate those types of things? The reason that that's important is because you're not asking AI to create something particularly novel. You're asking it to accelerate something that already has visibility inside of the organization. Because the end goal here is to get trust built and alignment. There's a lot of messiness when it comes to AI right now in terms of accuracy, hallucinations, what it's good for, what it's not good for, and it's going to take a while to kind of build that trust flywheel. Early stage use cases to concentrate on will be around time gains, efficiency gains, and potential cost savings around those. Those are usually the easiest ones to pick off because you know where you're spending time, or SMEs know where they're spending time. And then so we'll kind of look for some of the cost savings output from that. But the big point is to create a feedback loop with the subject matter experts so that you can kind of help develop this type of stuff with their kind of institutional knowledge, and then later kind of map those out to future key results inside of the organization so that we can, kind of make sure that those things are mapped. But the big point of it, to get beyond, I've just given a bunch of folks in our organization access to chat, and A, maybe nobody's using it, B, nobody knows how to use it. There's certainly education things that can happen. But what we found is that the lighthouse or the signal is to show kind of widely in the organization, here's some tools, some light tooling that we've built to automate certain types of processes. And so that comes down to a proof of concept use case. I'm going to run through some that we did in terms of the kind of what it was, what it impacted our organization, and the kind of, there's also maybe some time and cost savings aspects of it. So in POC phase, I already explained phase one, which is, can we get this working manually with AI before we think about turning it into something wider inside of the organization? So we just a lot of cut and paste and prompt engineering and feedback that goes on there to get it to a rough form where we might want to put it into a place that could be distributed to the organization. And then the second part, which is key for us, but you can do this manually as well, is we have some we'll call it web dashboards that relatively unsophisticated technology people can use to create an interface. So somebody can input a ticket number or a case number and have it start doing processing on top of it. But it's more of like a drag and drop thing, and I'll kind of show some aspects of it later. But the important part of that is cut and paste happens usually with one subject matter expert that's like, I have an idea for something that I want to improve, either time-wise or quality output-wise, or maybe there was something that I just don't do that I would love to do because it's too time-consuming. And so, but that's usually a one-on-one. So that'll be like the AI team plus the subject matter expert communicating back and forth to get that right. But how do you start to show that outside of that individual? You can't just say, hey, Jane came up with this use case. Here's all of Jane's steps to get to that output. Hey, everybody else on the team, follow her steps. It's just not going to work in practice. It's like, how do you get it beyond an individual and start to spread out further? And that's where we use low code, no code type platform. We use one called Retool. There's a whole bunch of them out there. It makes it easy to take that cut and paste mockup to an actual visual mockup that you can then say distribute to a team that has controlled inputs and outputs, so that they don't need to know all the pieces under the hood that Jane had to figure out to get the thing tuned so that we could write the low code app on top of it. So that was a game changer for us. It turned our Q4 from like, let's implement say like 4 or 5 use cases that we had looked at the beginning of the quarter to why can't we do like 30 or 40? Because our time to kind of turn around is quite quick on that. And then the last part is, once you have a low code or no code interface, then you can look at, do we want to integrate this into some existing application or workflow? So for us, we have a trouble tracking system called an SMC. Do we want to take it from the low code spot and maybe make it a button inside of that tool? That involves a lot more complications because you're modifying production code versus creating kind of proof of concept visuals. And so that's kind of the POC path. So I'm going to go over a few different use cases that we've had at our company, and kind of show you some of the process and analysis. So one use case was, we wanted to be able to assess the satisfaction of a client based off of their ticket history. So over a course of, say, 6 months, show me out all the back and forth that we've had with a client, and then rate their satisfaction, low, medium, high, and start to give us kind of a summary analysis. So that was our thought, and we do this process on a pretty regular basis. You would do it before maybe a client call if they've been having an issue, like giving a back summary, or kind of in quarterly business reviews or account transitions. So like I said, the first phase for us was let's figure out how to do it manually. So I mentioned earlier that because this involves proprietary data, we have a bunch of different models that you have access to inside of the chat interface that we have internally. So we ask that folks flip it over to one of our self-hosted private models before pushing client data through it. So that was kind of like phase 1. But phase 2 is cut paste. So literally go into the ticketing system, copy the content of that ticket, and then ask it in English to do what you want to do. We'll call this prompt tuning, because detail is going to come out there that you're gonna be like, oh, that's not exactly the format I want. I want it templated a different way. It's not really grasping the whole concept of high, medium, low, right? Whatever you see as a human in the output, you're trying to kind of match that to what you would do in the best effort on a manual basis if you were doing it without AI. So this is a process that could take, I don't know, hours maybe of having an SME cutting and pasting stuff in and seeing what the system responded back with. This is like the second layer, which is, okay, now that we've got that response back, in a format that we want, how do we automate that? So all the low code, no code is take the instructions that the SME has figured out and turn that into an application, but very lightly. So all we're doing is almost cutting and pasting the instructions from the previous cut and paste step into an application, and it allows us to give wider distribution. So this is the type of application that comes out on the front end. The hardest work is from the SME to get it ready to go. Once the SME gives the AI team, here's how we would like it to look, it takes like maybe an hour to come out with this type of application. And the important part with the application of client satisfaction is that this application lives on the web for us. So internal to the organization, but on the web. So now instead of one person on the sales support team having access to it, everybody on the sales support team has access to the URL to go out. So we take an estimate on all of these of how much time we're spending doing this manually inside of our organization. So this particular one probably took us on an order of 8 hours of total time between SME, AI team, some tweaking back and forth, and pretty sizable return gain. But the kind of the greatest return of all of the use cases I'm going to show are at this stage being early innings, showing the organization the art of the possible. And so where this thing really gets legs is not so much when Jane, the SME, comes and makes this. It's when Joe, the other SME on the team, realizes, oh, this is the kind of stuff that we can do. It's use cases that show the benefit, not necessarily just prompts and ideas and things like that. It's like, here's something that actually impacts my day-to-day business. Externalities of this is when you build a module that does like client sat. We also do quarterly business reviews. We transfer accounts between sales reps. Knowing point in time where client satisfaction is on a set of all of their trouble ticket interactions is a useful input to those existing processes, some of which are later in these use cases. Here's a really simple one that came out of the client satisfier. So when somebody saw the client satisfaction gauge, they're like, well, what about the use case where we need to hand off the status of a ticket between shifts, or an executive is brought in because something maybe got escalated. They need a quick summary of what's going on with a ticket that might be a year's worth of communication back and forth. So how do we do that? And this thing probably took an hour of time modifying the previous one to take this out. And we created an executive and a technical ticket summarizer. And this was one that we're actually looking at integrating into the SMC dashboard, so that when a tech support person is going through their shift, they don't have to go to an external app. They just click on a button that just says, give me the current technical summary of what's going on, because I haven't worked on this ticket before. It just got escalated to me. So this is a very small ask in terms of time to turnaround, but a pretty large value. And the reality is, it's not only saving an amount of hours and amount of dollars related to those hours. The important part is there were a multitude of situations where, like, an executive's trying to get up to speed on what's going on so they can talk to the client, right? They just weren't able to do it. They would do the best they could to scan through. So there's like a quality and a process improvement that kind of goes on there. Another one that came out of that particular ticket summarizer was, hey, if we have an outage that affects multiple customers, we owe them an email at the end of that outage saying who was affected, what was remediated, what was a timeline to do those types of things. So in parlance for our organization, a root cause analysis. And those things take a long amount of time to do, because they have to be thorough, but they also have to have a level of summary. So they need to have that combination. So it takes a lot of work to kind of roll through that, and a lot of approvals that have to go before it goes out. But the thing is, these are analyses of some sort of a system outage usually. And so while the actual time saved isn't substantially large, On the other side, it didn't take us a long time to do this. It was merely a prompt modification of the previous one. But more importantly, we can now get this root cause analysis out much, much quicker to clients after the end of whatever the issue is. Just say, hey, this ticket's ready to go, do the root cause analysis of it. And importantly, what will come back will be something like is on the screen. We don't just copy, paste, blast that out to clients, because AI just shouldn't be, at least the way that we use it, shouldn't be trusted 100% of the time. A human needs to kind of take a look at that and validate that that's maybe the tone and the format that we want to have that out, see if there's any modifications, any additional detail that maybe it didn't capture. But it definitely needs to go through a human filter at the end. On the converse, if we find that this system is spitting out things that are generally missing a certain item, that's a quick feedback loop from a subject matter expert to tune the prompt so that we can then have the application update. This is a huge one that is helpful for our organization. So we have an automated system that will fill out RFPs. So we have a knowledge. So this is to maybe the walk phase of crawl, walk, run. We have our own internal knowledge base hooked into AI, or our AI system. And so we could go like, hey, the questions people ask in RFPs are generally similar, but they're based off of whatever's in our knowledge base. So we'll take like a 180 question RFP and kind of line by line query the knowledge base and have the AI summarize it. So we take the RFP process from, at least for the first draft of the response, from maybe 8 hours, 10 hours to 5 minutes as it runs through. But again, you're not going to take those answers and just copy, paste, and send them off as an RFP response. You're going to realize that you're going to look at each of the kind of conclusions and say, okay, that seems to be comprehensive. Well, that one's fine, that one's fine, we'll modify it. So there's still going to be a human amount of work, but it's substantially less. And more importantly, at least with our types of organizations, there's just a lot of RFPs that you don't answer because it's just so voluminous, and you have the answers, but it seems like really a left field deal that has a low probability, so you just don't do it. So how many deals were left on the floor outside of the time that you saved by just not having the resources to kind of go back to it? So again, this one took a little bit more time. It probably took us a week's worth of time because we were pulling in a bunch of different input and data. But there's a pretty big payoff, and additionally, it shows the sales side of the organization as opposed to the technological side of the organization, some of what AI can do. We also have this one, which is a huge kind of component, which is account transition. So if you hire a new rep or reallocate accounts between reps, but also there's a secondary component of this, which is quarterly business reviews. So when we go and look at a client, say like, okay, what's been going on with these folks in the last quarter? We're going to want to pull information from a whole bunch of proprietary data sources. So again, this is more towards the walk phase for us, but it shows a little more of the power. There's data in Salesforce, there's data in our marketing systems, there's data in potentially our technical documentation, there's data in the ticketing system, and there's data in emails and other places. We pull that all in a single app and start to make conclusions about that. Now, there's some things that the AI doesn't know, which is, tell me about the typical buying process of this client. It's a very nuanced piece of information that's in the head of a sales VP or an account rep. AI is not going to be able to fill that in. But if you took a template of all the things we need to generally answer in a QBR, or when we move an account from one rep to another, 70% of those can be answered 80% of the way by the AI. So it really gives you a great head start into a process that you have to do anyways. And so this is an example of one of the pieces that has had a big impact on our organization. And the time to do this, it was a couple of weeks. This took some serious time. It was about pulling in data from a whole bunch of different sources. But what you'll find is by building these little use cases, there will often be externalities. So the additional win of, hey, we have this account transition tool. can't we just use that for QBRs too? That was what came out of the sales rep. So yeah, absolutely. Might need to tweak it a little bit to be more strategic on the last quarter, but that's small potatoes when it comes to kind of rolling things out. But again, we're all in early innings here. My suggestion is just to focus on getting folks inside of the organization enabled with chat, and then figuring out some things that are already happening inside of your organization that you can write some basic code to solve on an automated basis. So those are things that can show kind of quick wins. And then I also wanted to cover the, as much as this hasn't been particularly about news, it's been more about using. I mean, we had some pretty crazy stuff that went on with OpenAI, and I only bring this up not so much as a negative on OpenAI, but more of an input as to how much things are changing. And so within the course of a couple of days, hired, fired, board resignations, founders fighting, apologies. It was pretty amazing. I mean, and 3 weeks ago, we didn't even know if OpenAI was going to exist. Now we have OpenAI and then Google's Gemini that's coming out as front runners. But I found this to be particularly interesting. So the Ilya guy at the top of this is one of the co-founders of OpenAI and supposedly a force behind getting Altman ousted. And so as we think about these systems being designed and all the technological stuff underneath it, there's still a lot of human failings involved too, where the master designer couldn't even figure out what was going to happen a couple of days down the road from a human level. So I'll leave everybody again with this, that while we're automating processes and simplifying things and saving time, the goal here isn't to build a completely automated system of human interaction. So it's important to take times. I was just out at a trade show for 3 days, getting that face-to-face time. The machines can't replace that, and it's just a critical kind of component. And whatever AI we're using this month or next month is going to be the worst that we ever use. And I forgot I threw this slide in. So I use AI all the time to come up with slides, like silly slides. And this is one that came up as I was going through my decks from the last month. And this would be DALL-E 3 from OpenAI, and I just found it humorous. Well, I didn't modify this one from the last one, but if you wanted to reach Cal, his information's there. But I also have an AI success kit if anybody hasn't taken a look at it, which is just a collection of documents and things you can read to kind of get up to speed. But happy to take some questions, and can go definitely on more general news stuff if you want that. But this one was more focusing on what you can use AI for.
Great. Thank you, Brad. Always super helpful. And I highly recommend you guys are getting this amazing free tool. I've taken a look and there's just a lot there. It's a really comprehensive starter kit. If you haven't dived in quite yet, which I hope you have. So we have our AI expert here, ready, available. What questions do we have for Brad? You can put your questions in the Q&A. As always, I think you covered it.
Somebody raised their hand. Oh, there's a Q&A thing.
Okay. Do you see the hand raised still?
Yeah, well, I see Maria. How about we let Maria go, and then I'll answer Hugh's question after that.
Great.
Yeah, let me put that.
Hey guys, am I unmuted? I may be unmuted.
You're good to go.
Okay, cool. So I work for like a local council lady, and what I've been kind of using AI for is a lot of like writing scripts and stuff. But I see the way you're talking about it, and like a big way we could use it is we've been tracking resident calls, right? They call in, they tell us about this problem they're having. This problem goes across like several city departments, or there's like private people that kind of step in this. So there's like a need for, you called it like a ticket summarizer
Mm-hmm.
or even the like root cause analysis.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in my head, I can't figure out how to transition from like the tracking system we've had, which is like Google Sheets, it's a shared document between all of us, and like kind of a ticket system. Do you have a suggested
Oh, you
platform?
mean for actually like tracking some sort of we'll call it a request?
Yeah, and like, so we'll hear from the person and then a couple days later someone will tell us the response to their problem and then, then we'll go left or right and because of their response and then in a couple more days someone else will give us, like for
Yes.
example, like abandoned house that the state of Ohio might own. So we send it to building and building housing kicks it back to us and says the state of Ohio owns it. So then we send it to the right contact over there. And then,
Yeah, yeah. So not really an AI issue on the surface. It's more of like, how do I track a particular thing? Yeah, I use what's the CRM that I use for one of my businesses? So CRM.
I think we tried like Microsoft Access for a second, but like it
Yeah,
required
I
so
think I
much
think I think
specialization.
yeah, I think you don't want like a database like that. You want you want like an actual issue or incident tracking type system. I know like HubSpot has one, and then I forget what the other one that I've used for some of my other businesses, but you can generally find something that has like a certain amount per user per month, and then
Hmm.
it'll track all those pieces, and then later when you want to like correlate stuff, a lot of them will have like an AI plugin or tool to allow you to do the correlation. But
Okay.
that's generally the best way to go, is to get a system like that in place.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so next question was from Hugh. Can you give us an impression of what your walk stage looks like? A Python app, RAG, few shot. So Hugh has a couple of items that are like more of a technical nature. And so walk stage to me doesn't necessarily, well, I guess I did have up there with private data and private inference, but uh, to me, it's more of like getting to that POC application phase. But in terms of private data, private inference, we will have like on one side, you're right, like a Python app. And on the other side, a set of data stores. So one set of data store might be RAG, but if you look at that, like the no code app that we use, it's think of it as like an octopus where the application is the body, and then we're pulling in data from a bunch of different places. So for the example of the summarizer of the account transition tool, that's like a bunch of queries into different systems. So Salesforce, 6sense, Pardot, knowledge base, ticket system too. And so it kind of pulls in all of that stuff. So it doesn't have to be a RAG lookup in a vector store. That's useful for like those types of things when you need to go into a ticket system. And so it's yeah, that's kind of like the one half of it. And then the other half of it is if it's private data, like client data, customer data, internal employee data, it has to go to a private hosted model, which we host like locally in our infrastructure. Okay, so let's see. Ethan has a question. How do you suggest small companies step into AI that don't have IT departments such as yours to customize and refine the software? Yeah, so I haven't done an exhaustive look as to what simple pieces of software there are that kind of allow you to drag and drop. So certainly any small organization could give their employees access to the chat tools. So how do you get them from having access to the chat tool to kind of getting it broader inside of the organization? And there might just be a portion around education around how to use prompts by role. And so there's a bunch of resources out there that show you, hey, you're a salesperson or you're a marketing person or you're a blog writer specifically. What are some things you can even ask AI this stuff too? Like what are some things I can do to maximize my capability in AI? But I'm actually quite interested because the piece has come up in a couple of presentations that I've given of people asking like, well, what are there like the same as like for a salesperson, it's their Sandler training. Is there like an AI training that I can give to people? And I haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking for it myself. And so if you don't have the ability to create an application and you don't have the ability to maybe code something manually or find a low code solution, it's probably just getting everybody the gym membership and then the personal trainer being the educational component of it. Okay, so Jason asks, can you speak on autonomous agents and if you're using them? Yeah, so this is a hot topic, we'll say, probably, I guess, from a business perspective, but also from a research or scientific perspective. And I think one piece here is maybe map this out 5 or 10 years and look at these early use cases and what you're trying to do and be like, what's kind of the end state here? And the way that I would look at it is take an organizational chart or org hierarchy and by role and look at what are the process components that or workflows that you generally handle and which one of those can be automated. And long term, I see there being a chain of agents that kind of work together to create outputs. So we'll call it a workflow. Here's an input. It goes to agent 1, agent 2, agent 3, and then an output comes out of there, which would be the similar things that you would do as a human. But the technology isn't there yet. So as I mentioned multiple times, like the very rough cut early stage AI output of some of these low code tools that we have internally, we would never send that out to a client. So for us, we wouldn't even create like a bot that the client could interact with yet. We would need it to be of a higher quality. So if you're saying, hey, I don't trust that this thing's more than say 70 or 80% accurate, as you start taking the outputs of one particular AI agent and sending it as inputs to another AI agent, your error compounds significantly. And so for systems that require high levels of reliability, you wouldn't want to kind of push those things yet. But that's where it's all going. So while it's not there now, it's stuff that we're taking a look at because we have complicated workflows like a lot of companies. And it's like, can we where it'll start is, can you do one thing highly accurate through AI? And then can you do 2 things? And then can you do more of them? And is it a specific piece of knowledge or domain expertise that's very difficult for AI to do? So it becomes hard to kind of pass those things down the road. So no, we're not using them. Yes, we're experimenting with things. We haven't seen the kind of chain of agency working at scale. And, it's pretty complicated for us if it doesn't work. So we're holding off on that type of stuff. Thanks, Jason. That was a good one. Okay.
Any others? Sorry, Brad. My Q&A is not showing any questions, so I'm making you do literally all of the work today. So
no problem. It showed everything was super easy. It showed up. So
wonderful. Awesome. Well, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, I want to thank Brad for coming back and for doing these monthly programs with us. As he said, we're going to bring him back in the new year. I'm going to hang on to Brad as long as I possibly can and keep bringing him back to talk about AI for you. Thank you all for coming on a Friday morning. Really quickly, I just wanted to let you know of the last couple of things coming up for Jumpstart. Our next State of AI updates will be scheduled very soon for 2024. And then our last webinar of the year is next Wednesday, December 13th at noon on navigating the cloud for small business. So we hope to see you all there virtually. As I said, there will be an email going out with a recording of this, as well as a survey. We hope to see you on Wednesday to learn about cloud computing for small business. Thank you again, Brad. Thank you everyone for coming and engaging, and everyone have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, Lauren.